Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back in another beautiful video. In our video for today, I am going to focus a little bit on teachers because I'm a little bit biased to students. As you know, I'm an English teacher, so I kind of like marginalize teachers on the expense of focusing on students. The first point that I want to mention here is simply teaching does not equal to learning. So if you're teaching whatever kind of plan you're teaching, does not mean that the students are going to learn what you're teaching. Maybe you end up having them learn something different. Like, for example, I'm teaching them statistics, they end up learning, for example, sociology. So the idea is that it is not always assumed. Assumptions are forbidden in language teaching. You need to always scale up your plan to things that might be possibly accurate in terms of operationalization, which is a term that we use in statistical linguistics to mean that whatever you say, it should be scalable, it should be measurable, and it should be something that kind of like calculated. So we need to make sure that whatever we say, it can be calculated. Teaching does not equal to learning. So that leads us to the question here. What is the purpose of the teacher in the classroom? What is the role of the teacher in the classroom? The role of the teacher in the classroom can be, probably funneled down to this quote that I am quoting from one of the books that I truly love. So what's a teacher for? Short answer, to help learning to happen. To help learning to happen. That's the whole purpose of the teacher. So we're not in the jug mug kind of debate here. A jug mug kind of debate is when we consider students as small cups and we are the bigger jugs. So we just spill the liquid that we have in our jugs, in the mugs, and this is a kind of like chicken egg kind of debate. But the point to be made here is quite simple, that whatever we tell the students to do, it is not emanating the fact that we are the source of knowledge. We're not the source of knowledge. We are the facilitators of knowledge. So the second question that we may consider is the fact that what kind of method should we have in order to teach our students? There are actually hundreds of methods, and some of these methods are found in the linguistics literature. For example, the grammar translation method, or the audiolingual method, or the communicative language teaching method, or the strong communicative language teaching method, or the weak one, or community language learning, or the natural approach, or the task-based learning, or the silent way, or person-centered approach, or lexical approach, or something that I truly love and I embrace, which is the last approach that we've studied and we analyzed, and we found that it is perfect to the Iraqi, for example, and the Middle East setting here, or maybe it can be generalizable globally. And this method is called the principled eclecticism. It means that you need to select whatever suitable for your classroom from all the combination of methods, and you apply it in your classroom. That is, in a nutshell, what this method is. But our discussion for today, our argument for today, stands for the fact that no matter what approach you do, you have to make sure that it's suitable, tailored to the students. If it is not tailored to students, if it cannot be fit with the context of your teaching, it's not going to be something that can be considerably beneficial to them. So probably something that you may consider is what kind of output I'm expecting from the input that I'm giving to the students, or I'm helping the students to learn. Now, one of the key features of successful English teachers is the fact that they enable students. So they are enablers to students to learn and to experience language. And a highly recommended approach to follow with the students is to have them experience the learning process instead of like giving them, bombarding them with a lot of instructions on what to do, and this is what you need to do, and spend around 80% of the time in the classroom telling them what to do, and they ending up forgetting all about it. This is probably something forbidden. This is the forbidden fruit. But the idea is that you have to have them experience the kind of approach that they're doing, whether they are requesting a menu in the in a classroom. No, it's not in a restaurant, or probably having a simulation role play in an airport where they're trying to book a ticket to Italy, to Rome, well, post COVID-19, of course. or something like that. This is something that we consider a very highly influential language. And I still remember, since I was back in college, that once we did a kind of role play of Hamlet play from William Shakespeare, and it just turned out to be really amazing. I still remember some of the quotes of "To Be or Not to Be." That is the question where I had the role of Hamlet in that play. I really emphasize that idea that you need to, in optimal conditions, of course, we're not talking about 50 students in the classroom. No, that is not optimal kind of setting. This is not encouraging learning. This is probably a zoo. This is not a classroom. But the point to be made here is the fact that you need to find a way, find a trick to deal with this kind of situation, this quagmire that you find yourself put. Since a lot of schools, public or private, fall under the category of dictatorship kind of education, where you are completely observed, you are completely going in adherence with the fact that the school stipulates what you need to do, what kind of method, what kind of textbook that you're doing. So I remember one of the authors who was in Russia back then, they had to follow strict method, and which is the grammar translation method, and they had to follow strict rules on what to do and what to teach the students. But within that, he mentioned that more than 90% of the teachers that he had experience with, they never follow that. They follow their own kind of approach with a little bit of modifications, of course, to just make it go and streamline with the kind of plans that are stipulated by the school. So going back to point number one that I mentioned here, what is the purpose of the teacher and what kind of classroom the teacher should have? There are a few examples here that I wanted to show, and these are summarizing what the whole video is about. Some of these examples are as follows. So the picture that you're seeing here right now is a picture of pairs work for students. I highly recommend this, and it is very useful. I applied it in Baghdad University with a lot of students, and I could see some good benefit. There's transfer of knowledge between one learner and another. There's a little bit of stutter here and there, but that does not mean or downsize the benefit of this learning practice. Pairs, you have to rotate each one of the learners to talk with another person, but you have to make sure that they have enough questions, and they should not stop before the end of the time that you give them, whether that's 1 minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes. This is approach number one for speaking. I'm not talking about writing or reading or listening particularly or per se. I'm talking about speaking, but it can be generalized to other activities once you think of the way to present it to students. The second approach, or the second method to enhance students' learning by speaking, is opposing teams. So you can see the structure of each one of the groups here. We're just trying to always constantly restructure the classroom so they don't feel bored on the expense of boredom. This is very highly recommended among teachers, is not to follow the same class design every day. And this leads us to talk a little bit in later videos about class design and what is the optimal class design for encouraging students to learn better English, whether that's French, English, or whatever language they're learning or they're planning to learn. When you present a question like men and women are never be equal, can never be equal, for example, this is a kind of stimulating question, and encourage each one of the teams to take a corner to think of the cons and pros of this statement, and you have them both debate on that. Now, this can be happening in the intermediate, upper intermediate, pre-intermediate level, C, B1, B2, C1, C2 levels. It cannot be applied in the beginners level because they don't have enough vocabulary to move around and be mobile when they're talking. The next design is something we call face-to-face discussion. Now, they sit across from each other on a small table, and they start debating about a question. Like, for example, tell us a little bit about daily routine, where they talk for 1 minute or 2 minutes. And what you can do is to take one of the students and put it at the end of the table and then push them to face a new student. And you repeat that again and again and again and again and again and again and again until you feel that the students are saturated with enough conversation. Next is something we call panel. And in panel, 2 or 3 presenters go in front of the classroom and start practicing. So this is for public presentations, considering the fact that they have good skills in conversation. That's going to help them a lot. The next one is something we call public meeting. In public meeting, they walk around. There is no limitation for the time spent, and it is very useful, but I don't recommend it for some purposes. Buzz group is to have 3 or 4 people sitting or standing with each one of the groups individually and talking with each other about some kind of topic. And the last one is something we call wheels. So there is inner wheel and outer wheel, and you rotate them. That is one of the most useful ones to teach them a lot of things that have to do with presentation. And as you could notice here, that the design of the classroom is different. That is going to help students feel more energetic to converse with each other. So stick with these ideas, and I think they're going to be helpful to you. Trying to think out of the box is going to help you a lot. Read a lot. That is going to be one of the best things that you do in order to improve your English teaching. Thank you so much. This is the English teacher, وليد.